Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another Shamshir Sound video. My name is Ali Nadem, and in today's video we're going to be talking about automation clips. We're going to talk about all the tips and tricks I use to speed up your workflow, and we're going to talk about different techniques, different types of lines that you can use, different automations, different purposes. For any newcomer, beginner, automation clips are essentially your tool to automate knobs, to automate low pass filter, mix amounts, volume. Essentially, just look for anything that you can automate. Pitch, you can automate mix amounts, you can automate essentially a lot of knobs. Any knob that you see in FL Studio probably can be automated. And so the whole idea with automation clips is that it will create more movement, it'll create more dynamics in your track, and create a lot of interest and ear candy for the listener. So first thing I want to talk about is just your standard clip. Now, this is something that I automated here, Fruity Balance. I right-clicked and hit Create Automation Clip. Of course, when we right-click with our arrow, it's creating multiple points. So this is just a simple thing. I'm going to hit Control-Alt-Z to go back. And if you click and hold your left mouse, you can then rearrange the distance or where that point is that you're holding. Also, if you right click, you have a lot of options here that sometimes I know myself in the beginning stages I overlooked. I didn't really spend a lot of attention on this. And by default, single curve will be useful for most people. Single curve will allow you to do just a linear line, or if you pull this up or down, you can do a kind of nice little curve there. But did you know if you switch this to something like wave, you can get some really cool, crazy results. And you guys can do stuff where if you want to maybe simulate some sort of LFO, you can do that with this. You can even switch this to something like pulse. And you can see that this might ease the process of, instead of having to draw these by one by one. I don't use pulse or wave a lot, but one that I actually use a lot is hold. Let's say if this was a volume envelope and we wanted it to be silent right on bar 9. Now, one option is for us to, let's say, draw a line and draw another line. Okay, now we've drawn 2 points. But another easier way is just draw 1 point, right click, and put hold. And what that does is that it just goes vertically down. And then you can just pull that down. It's much easier. And it uses the first point as the point of reference for volume. So whatever this is at, it'll keep that volume, and then hold will just cut it right off. When you continue, you can keep it on hold, and you can see there, or you can switch it back to linear using the single curve. So I like using hold a lot when I'm doing volume adjustment, especially if, like, let's say a drop is coming and you want it to be silent right before the drop. Using hold is very useful for that. On the subject of automation, you can also link multiple things to the same automation clip, but you can also take it a step further. So for instance, let's say insert 3 had something here. So we'll put Fruity Balance on there. You can also link it to the existing one right there, Balance Master Volume. Now you'll see that this turned red because it's warning you that there is an existing link to that. That's okay. But if you press this on, what it would do is that it would remove the normal link and just make kick linked to it. So watch this. We'll see if we come to the master Fruity Balance, it's no longer linked. And we can see this in action right here. So if you're ever wondering why can't I link multiple things to the mixer track, make sure that you are not turning that on. Make sure remove conflicts are off, because it sees that as a conflict and you want to leave that off, such that you can have more than one link to the same automation clip. And this is going to save you a lot of time because as your project gets bigger and you have a lot of sidechain automation or a volume automation where they do the same thing, it's going to be in your interest to just put them to the same automation clip rather than having multiple. One cool thing you can do with this too is not only you can link it to the same one, but you could do stuff where you invert it. So this is a bit more complicated, but I do recommend you guys to start looking into this, because there are times where I use the inverted, and the inverted is cool because that way when one goes up in volume, like here, the other one goes down in volume. So it's an inversion. And this can be really cool if it's something like a cutoff filter or something where when something is off, the other one turns on, or vice versa, you can do an inversion. And that can give you some really cool results. So messing around with that, this is essentially a little formula you can use here, and it can say, well, I want to do 4 times smaller amount, 2 times smaller amount. So for instance, if you hit 4 times smaller increment, you'll see here that it is automated to the same clip, but it's 4x smaller than this one. So if we say we bring this one down, it's even lower in volume, and you know, the possibilities are endless in terms of what you can do here. So that one's a bit more mathematical, but you can get a lot of cool results using that. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is, let's say you guys are making an EDM track, a big room track. One thing that typically is done in a lot of those tracks is we have something like, let's say like the first 4 bars or 8 bars, the lead is playing like at its normal octave, and then after it goes up at a higher octave, okay? So this is 15 seconds. So let's make a pattern here. We're gonna call it lead low, and we're just gonna leave it empty. We're gonna call this one lead high. So the whole point I want to push with this is that, let's say for instance, we're gonna just delete these. Let's say for instance you are playing the notes, and it's, you know, the low notes, and then we go to the high notes. Now you have to remember, when we do that, the low notes, however we tweak them, if we got them the way we like it, we have the Camel Crusher on it, OTT, Sausage Fattener, we've EQ'd it however we like. When we do that, you can also have a separate EQ, maybe later in the chain or earlier in the chain, that does an automation. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll explain. So let's first create an automation clip for the mix amounts, and we're going to turn it all the way down. So something like this. And then it'll kind of just repeat itself. So during lead low, it's playing out, and then high. Now when we go high, you have to remember we're also losing some low harmonics, we're gaining some high harmonics. So when that is done, you can use a trick, and I've seen Respawn show this. He makes great tutorials. Respawn is a big inspiration. And he'll do something where he kind of bumps up the low to compensate, because now we've moved up 1 octave. And he'll reduce a bit of the high, but not too much. And what that is effectively doing is doing like a dynamic EQ for when it goes to the higher end part of the octave of the notes, playing the high end notes. And that way you're playing it, and it's a 0 latency plugin. And as it hits the 9th bar, now your FabFilter Pro Q kicks in, specifically to tailor this part of the track. So this is a more of like a technical thing that you can use. So definitely there are some ways that are not as common, is a bit unorthodox, but you can definitely use that for your automation clips. That's a really cool tip that I like using as well. Another one that I've used in the past was using Fruity Balance to kind of hack the volume before the drop. As y'all know, it's always a good idea to make your drop the most impactful, especially if you're making classic electronic music, big room, electro house. And what I would actually do was I would have something on my master right after my limiter, and I would tweak it so that it was going like, I'll show you guys. I'll create an automation clip. I'll bring this to -2. And I would copy the value, and let's say this is the build-up. Okay, let's just say this is a build-up right here. All right, let's call this build-up. All right, and then here is the drop. Now, if that's the drop, let's say the build-up is 7 bars. Okay, let's just ignore that. What I would end up doing many times is I would set a clip here. I would paste the value, and I would copy this 80% value, which is the default. And then sometimes I would have it linear, sometimes I would have a slight curve, and I would create a bit more tension by just reducing the volume slightly. A lot of times DJs will do this live. They're reducing the volume or not playing it full, and then the drop comes and boom, they unleash that volume. So there's a lot of uses technically you can see here that you can use the automation clips to favor your productions. One of which being something like this. You can also use the slice tool to go ahead and do something like this. Do a little slice, so left click and hold. And if you want to replicate this, let's say we wanted to do something for lead low again, okay? There's no point redrawing all those points all over again. Instead, what we can do is we can just left click and left click, Or we can copy and paste it if we did something like this. Okay. We can just copy and paste the whole thing. And the nice thing is that when you do that, when you do something like this, whatever you do here, especially if you had to like, and it's great for song structure because then you can quickly finish song structure. So let's say you're happy with your drop and you're like, hey, you know what? This part's a bit too much for the cutoff. I'm gonna bring that one down. And then you don't have to go to the second drop and do that again because the same automation clip is being used. So you can see how using this in conjunction with some of the other stuff can really speed up your workflow when you guys are doing drops and things like that. So really cool stuff with the automation clip. I'm really a big fan of the hold when we're using the shape, but you guys can experiment and see there's all different types of stuff you can get out of this. Double curve, different types of curves you can do there, and each one is exclusive to each point, so you can mix and match as you see fit, whatever you want to do. I think the wave is definitely going to be more better if you want to simulate like an LFO, but it's a bit harder to control. So again, there's no right or wrong way when you're using these. Ultimately, there's no rules. You know, like Hardwell said, there are no rules. I'd like to know what you guys think about automation clips. Are there certain techniques you guys use with automation clips that benefit you guys? Or, you know, let me know if there's any stuff that maybe I haven't covered. One more thing I want to talk about is, let's say you were happy with this and you wanted to make like a special version of that automation clip for the second drop. What you could do is, instead of having to be like, okay, well, it's doing the same thing or redrawing it, go ahead and left click and hit make unique. And what this will do is now you have a unique version of this, both still controlling the same knob. And we can see that here when we go to link controller, it's now generated a second link. So that's really cool. Now we have that automation clip still linking Fruity Balance, but it is a unique one. It's been made unique. It still controls the same knob, but we can make some adjustments to it and make it a fresh version of this. On that same topic, when we go to link controller, let's say you guys wanted to make some additions. Maybe there's a problem with your automation clip. So if you guys have any problems with your automation clip and you need to fix it, maybe it's linked to the wrong controller. This happened to me times where I'm like, I'm working very quickly and I accidentally, so let's do that actually. Let's go ahead and make an automation clip here, okay? Just a random one. I'm gonna go ahead and link this one to slot 5. And oops, I just made a mistake. How can I fix that? Will Control Z do it? Let's see. I don't know. I got rid of the clip, but you can see it's still linked. So it didn't do anything. So let's bring that back. And what you can do is you just go to this. We can see here, okay, it's linked to that. We can switch this. So we go ahead and we select the proper one. And now this is why it's important for you guys to name your automation clips, because if you don't name them, if you give these weird obscure names, it's going to be very hard for you guys to navigate, especially when you start getting a lot of automations and you guys will be like, where is it? Where is it? I can't find it. And it will make things very frustrating for sure. So here I'm going to be like, you know what? I want it on volume 1. Okay. But I can also say new link and I'm going to set volume 2. And now it is back to normal. I didn't have to reset it there. It will reset itself. But you can see there now it has the correct links put in place. Really cool, really nice. And you can fix the issues that you have there with your automation clips. So before we wrap up this video, guys, I want to talk about recording automations. So I don't use this personally, but I can see a great use if you guys have a MIDI controller or you want to give more of a human element where you're controlling that automation, doing some crazy stuff with it. What we're going to do is we're going to automate the volume knob in Fruity Balance, and we're going to click this button up here, the record, and it says here, what would you like to record? You get different options, but here we want to do notes and automation. So we hit notes and automation, and we're going to play back the track, and whatever I do here, it is recording this all. So I'm just going to go crazy with that, go down, go minus infinity, come slowly up. So this way you get more human element. And when we hit stop, you can see that we have now this weird automation. And this is really cool. Now, if you wanted to override this and you're like, this sounds terrible, I don't like this, you have a variety of options. This is recorded the automation inside of a container. This is inside of this right here. And I didn't touch base on this a lot. I actually used to use this a lot because if you hit edit events, it's an event going on. It's not an automation clip, but it's an event. And the event actually has a lot of cool controls where you can select everything like that and it's at minus infinity. You can right click and make all these weird adjustments here, but you can also go to the tools and go to something like LFO and do some crazy stuff here where you increase the baseline of the LFO. I used to do this when I made tracks like Electro Saiyans, Electro Gladiator, and I would draw LFO because I didn't have a lot of VST instruments that had LFO controls. So what I would do as a kid was I would put Fruity Fast LP, I would put some sort of low pass filter, and then what I would do is that I would make my own LFO. And you guys can still do this. There's nothing wrong with that. You get the different shapes you can choose. You can change the phase at which it starts. You can also dictate how it ends. So you can see here, you could start with a whoa, 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 whoa. You could change that start and finish. So some really cool stuff you guys can do on the edit events. It's a good thing I'm talking about this because this is something that's really, really cool and really kind of like, not a lot of people know about this. It's existed for years inside of FL Studio. So this one's really nice. I like this one. And you can see here, you can do a lot of nice things here where you can select like line and you can just come in here, clean this up. So let's say we wanted like a rise and a fall. We could do that. Come to a rise and fall. And then maybe I could do an LFO here. Hopefully this doesn't conflict with the one there. And you can see there, now we get this weird thing that might have been a bit harder to capture in the form of an automation clip. And just remember that when you are about to create an automation clip, look at the one that says edit events in case you want to do this, but you'll also encounter that when you guys are recording the automation up there. And then you can just close that up. Now, if we don't want this, I would go ahead and just right click it, get rid of it. And you can just go ahead. And if you see that it's going bonkers and going all over the place, you can either create an automation clip to keep it static at 80%, which is the volume, default volume for Fruity Balance. Or another option is if it keeps, let's say it keeps doing this, okay? Let's say it keeps going back to minus 13. If it were to keep going to a value and you're like, what's going on? I've deleted all the clips. Why is it not resetting? You can right click, reset it, and do something like init song. Initialize song with this position will tell it to, regardless of what happened in the past, and let's say you've deleted the automations, it will tell it to stay at that value when you start the project. So that pretty much is a wrap for the automation clips, guys. I just wanted to share with you guys some of the tips and some of the technical tips because this will definitely, I think, help your workflow when you guys are working on your tracks. If you guys have any of your tips of your own for automation, let me know in the comments below. And I'm working on my song right now. I'm finishing it up. It's sounding really good. I'm actually trying out new mixing techniques like I talked about in my mastering video using the clipper compensating for some headroom. So if you guys want to look at an easy way you guys can mix and master in your project, look at that previous video. It's really helpful. Make sure you guys drop a like on this video if you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be making more big room and electro track projects in the future once I get my song finished, because those videos do take a bit of time. And make sure you guys are subscribed. I appreciate that we exceeded 200 subscribers. That means a lot to me. Of course, we're in the infancy of this, but I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I love that you guys are enjoying the videos, and I look forward to making more videos with you guys. So I'll see you guys very soon. You guys have an excellent day. Take care.